Hi, and welcome to the Human Side of Business podcast. I'm Ange McCabe, CEO and co-founder of Intuitive Performance. I'm a performance coach, HR professional, whole person leadership facilitator, and your host. The Human Side of Business podcast is fueled by the genuine curiosity to understand how personal characteristics and skills can be leveraged to drive individual and team performance, tangible outcomes, and ultimately organizational success within business. Each podcast is devoted to sharing knowledge, expanding our learning edges, and exploring the trends in corporate culture towards growing the emotional intelligence of organizations. I'm so glad you're here. Hi, and I'd like to welcome Dr. Eric Holzapfel to the Human Side of Business podcast. So excited to have you here today.
I'm excited to be on, Ange. I really appreciate you having me. Thank you.
Thank you. Good. So let's dive right in. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and what brings you to the platform of how to practice mindful leadership.
I will give you a little background. I just think it's, that I was a leader first and I wasn't very happy. I was successful in all the material and outward views, but inside I was miserable, lonely, drank too much, those kind of things. So I was a CEO in my 20s. I got an MBA and went out into the work world and, traveled 50 weeks a year and worked 70 hours, 80 hours a week. And, I had the title, I had the Mercedes, I had that kind of stuff. I hit my early 30s and I was alone. I'm an athlete. I hadn't been, I was in terrible shape. I wasn't hitting the gym. I wouldn't do things. And I just said to myself, you got to make some changes or you're not going to be around very long. So I did. I had an epiphany moment. I've had a lot of epiphany moments in my world. It's just it's been a progression of them. My first one was, I had to lose weight. I had to get exercising again. I started doing that. I said, I got to find some purpose in my life. I'm good at this, so I went back to school to get a PhD in economics. I said, teaching, I'll teach. I've got to find something that gives me, some purpose. And I found yoga. And yoga was my first entry into mindfulness. I was an athlete and I'd become like disassociated with my body. I was just, Ken Robinson says, we're just, our body's something that carries our mind from meeting to meeting. I'd become that. And I started that. And then a couple of years later, my oldest brother, who's a poet, and my dad is a football coach, and he later was a superintendent, but he was at his heart a football coach. And they butted heads and were estranged. It really was a strain on my whole family, and I just watched my older brother, after being, apart for like 10 years, come closer and closer and closer to my dad. And when he got close to my dad, he opened up, and then my dad opened up, and I got my whole family back. He'd been meditating, and that was his, and he said, do you want to try it? And I said, heck yeah. I just watched my dad didn't change.
Right.
He was 70 or something. He didn't change.
Okay. Yes.
But my brother changed. And I said, yeah. And I tried that. And I was a closet meditator. I took to it immediately. I was a closet meditator. And I didn't share it. I think it can be something completely private. You don't have to, and especially until you've established a practice. I don't tell people to run up in the grandstands and go, yeah, I'm meditating, because we're still a very skeptical society. And if we're not, once you see the practice and what it really does for your life, I don't think you can be shaken. Like, I see people that do share it, but I think at first, until you reach that, until I say don't share till you've achieved. So, but then later on, I got my PhD in economics and I started teaching adjunct because I was just too entrepreneurial to go into the university environment. So I taught adjunct for 20 years and did a bunch through the university and loved it. But I was an entrepreneur and I started my own business, and then kind of one by one, people noticed changes in me, and I became someone that was approachable, with personal issues and things. And it just, I introduced them to some of the things that were working for me. We ended up having a seed group in our company with just a few people, talking about mindfulness, centering is usually what we call it when we begin with, just to not to freak people out. And started reading a book. We had a few people in the meeting, and before I knew it, the room was full of people. And we brought mindful-based stress reduction into the company.
Mm-hmm.
Vision statement was changed, not by me, but by the management team, to mindfully creating community. This is with our LC Real Estate Group, which is a primary business living in the gap as a nonprofit.
Mm-hmm.
And it just transformed so many people's lives that I decided to form a nonprofit and to share it with others. And it's just not, it's mindfulness is focus, and focus is wonderful for business.
Mm-hmm.
We're more successful than ever.
Mm.
And we make a big difference.
I think that's amazing, Eric. And the fact that you made a conscious decision to brand Living in the Gap as a non-for-profit, I think is phenomenal. But that aside, I'm really interested in what you had said. If we could go a little bit deeper or
Please,
further
let's
explain.
Let's go. Let's dive in.
Love your excitement about this topic. Explain to our listening group, what does it mean to mindfully meditate? Because there's so many different definitions now.
Oh, there is. Meditation is just to be to focus on something, to become familiar with, to focus on something. And I think, so many in the business community, I talk to them and they go, "Oh, mindfulness, that's woo-woo. That's too slow and it's too soft for business." I think woo-woo is the current state of the world.
It is.
We're so distracted and divisive and gridlocked. And it shows up for just our lack of progress in important areas. Mindfulness is the ability to focus and be happy and deliver on our goals and objectives. That's to me in business, that's what mindfulness is. I mean, you can't say to a business executive, "Oh, let's just go be mindful and forget about the results."
100%. There's a balance.
You won't be there.
Right.
6 months later, there'll be another leader. Now, but we teach to detach from results, which means, so what I do is I sit down, some things weekly, some things monthly, some things quarterly. I review them. We come up with the metrics and we say, "Here's what we're going to do." Then I sit down again the next week, the next month, the next quarter and say how we did and make adjustments.
Right.
In that time, I just try to be a good person. I try to focus.
It's that simple, is it?
Well, at its core, yeah.
Yeah.
I try not to be a butthole.
Yeah.
I try to focus on people, not just myself, which, honestly, for years, I just got up and said, "Where's mine?" And now I get up and practice gratitude.
Exactly.
And it's been transformational. So you asked the question, what is it like to mindful meditate? It's different for everybody. So I love meditation, and it's something that's really worked for me. I know some people that are very accomplished that don't do it. They have other practices. If you can spend some time in nature, that's huge.
You're
that
right.
Can be it. A mindful walk. My wife, it's and she meditates, but her medium is art. I watched her just transform herself through painting, which she was never encouraged when she was a kid. But at 50, she started painting, and
Beautiful.
she's awesome at it. And I've just watched her become present with it. So it does take some sort of practice in our world. I think it takes an intention to say, I'm going to take my focus back. Business, I love business. I'm a capitalist. I love it. And we're really good at stealing your attention and getting your attention on what we want to have it on. If you want it back, you're going to have to claim it back. You're going to have to make a focused intention that says, my attention is mine. Because to me, it means, can I focus on what I choose to focus on and notice when I go away and bring myself back? Notice when I go away and bring myself back. It's not, mindful meditation is not a clear mind, in my view. I don't even know what the heck that is. I mean, I've had experiences of that, but they're fleeting. I mean, they come in and once in a while I go, "Wow, I'd love to, where did that go? I'd like to get that back." Because I'm not in this work because I'm enlightened. I'm in this work because I'm crazy. My mind runs 100 miles an hour, and it gives me peace and joy. So mindful meditation to me is letting me focus. And I love business, and I think business is all about focus.
Definitely. And I like where you brought it down to habits, is what I'm hearing.
Totally. You are your habits. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's hearing it from the perspective of, okay, so if I have these grandiose goals to accomplish from a business objective perspective, what am I doing on a monthly, quarterly, monthly, weekly, daily basis to create sustainable habits to hit those goals? Now,
Oh, yeah.
I understand what you're saying in the sense of mindfulness and meditation and finding your own thing, right? So it
Yeah.
could be
Yeah.
affirmations, it could be the
Oh, I
actual
do
form
all
of
of that.
meditation, it could be short, long, it could be art, it could be nature, but it's
Yes.
being able to, what I would dub as ground yourself to tap into your own self-awareness and being able to slow that pace.
Love it.
One thing that came up from a place of curiosity was how do you, or how would you explain how to marry those things? Because oftentimes people see the human side as a distinct separate notion or operation, I guess, than our actual day-to-day workplace.
Yeah, I don't. I think how I am show up in one thing is how I show up in everything.
Mm-hmm.
And and I also find people say, well, don't become friends with the people you work with. You might have to fire them one day.
Mm.
Okay, if I have to, I'm a business guy. I'll do it compassionately. I'll do what it takes because it's, just who I am and my DNA. I mean, I love the people I work with. And I found the key, we're just doing some interviews with partners and employees here,
Mm-hmm.
part of my book launch. And I love them,
Mm-hmm.
and they're as worthy of my love as anybody I grew up with or my family or anybody I'd meet at, on a trip to India.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and why not? I find
Mm-hmm.
that we tend to get to know the people we work with enough to get what we want from them, what we
Mm-hmm.
need. And I've been guilty of that in the past as anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Some niceties. When you really dive in and get to know the people you work with, there's a trust that forms.
Mm-hmm.
You got their back, they got your back. Things happen. We had to close a home building division during COVID. We did it compassionately. I love those people. I didn't want to do it,
Mm-hmm.
but it wasn't working anymore. And I know that profit, it's not a purpose, but it's essential for me to be in business and for me to
Mm-hmm.
make a bigger difference. I have to. I mean, long term, I can live a year or two, but I can't go long term without making a profit. It just doesn't work in this thing. So
Mm-hmm.
it's important, but I find the emotional intelligence side at work to be real
Mm-hmm.
is
Mm-hmm.
so much easier than to put on this facade of this, I care about you.
Mm.
But to really
Yeah.
care about somebody.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
do.
Definitely.
That's being human.
Mm-hmm. And what I'm hearing, Dr. Eric, is it's more for you about integration. So your person's integrated and you show up, you carry your mindful self or you carry your EIQ around with you. That's not something that you're guarded. That doesn't sound to me like it would be disconnected in the workplace, which is absolutely amazing, especially from a leadership perspective.
Well, it takes some practice and some confidence,
Mm-hmm.
to do that because that's not what culture is telling us. That's not what you learn in your MBA classes and, those kind of things. But,
Mm-hmm.
so what? It's being human. It works.
Mm,
And try it.
mm,
And then you may not do it with everybody. Try some people and, start slow. With anything I say in this world, you start slow and be consistent.
right,
See what
right.
works and you warm up to it over time and you grow it because, business isn't something but just turning everything on its head every day. You
Of
try something
course.
a little bit, try some people that, you're closer to and see what happens and it grows over time. But the rewards are phenomenal. It will change your life.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And Dr. Eric, tell me more. You had mentioned a few moments back, there were a few epiphanies along the way for you that really
Yeah.
brought you to this thing called mindfulness and leadership. And so tell us more about what those were and how you knew it was more about the mindfulness versus another
Yeah.
system or another process.
Well, probably the biggest one, and when we get stuck, I think is when we have them. When we're working, what we have was working. We go along, and then we hit about something that's stuck, and then so the first story I had was around 1990, 91, something like that. met my wife, I went through my PhD, and then I went into business, and I hit it just right in Colorado. I had a partner, and we were doing 6 developments and I had 3 kids. I got to take them to Australia. I'm teaching part-time. I'm married to a beautiful woman. It's all going well. Fast forward 5 or 6 years, and we're in the Great Recession of 2008.
Mm-hmm.
And the recession was the best thing going on in my life. My oldest boy struggled. My youngest boy struggled. Sent my wife and I to marriage counseling. And what I had to do was go to work on myself. I couldn't change them. So I quit drinking. I went deep. I just said, I'm going to go to work on myself. An amazing thing happened is that when I let go and just said, I'm the problem, not that nobody else had to do anything, but I just
Of
said, I
course, I
can't
understand
control
you.
that.
Right, right.
I went deep and worked on self-acceptance, worked on anger, worked on some things that were blind spots that become evident. And when I gave my wife and kids the space, they bloomed. They just bloomed. I mean, it wasn't immediate. It wasn't ever, but they all did their own thing. They all today, I'll just fast forward, all 3 of my kids have a mindfulness practice. One is an entrepreneur making a difference for kids that work with them. The other 2 are working in this kind of space. One's getting his PhD in psychology. My daughter's a yoga therapist and runs retreats. She just finished one on Sunday. And my wife is amazing, just helps. She just lives for other people and serves and does things. She does Course in Miracles. I don't think it's one size or one thing for everybody. People got to find their thing. I mean, living the gap is what, with business is what I'm about. I love business, and they're not like that, but that's what I am, so you got to find your group. But that was an epiphany moment. And to watch again, like the story I told of my brother, when I change, others change because of my perception of them, because of the space I give them to change, and for whatever they do, if they choose to do or not,
Right,
but I'm the only one I can really control. And that we create our own world is what I've learned. And I've decided to create one where there's hope and mindfulness and kindness.
Exactly. And what I equate that to, there's a lot to unpack there first, but what I equate that to is like, we definitely have a choice to identify with feelings that either fill our cups or deplete our cups. Yeah, totally. And with that really drives the way that we think, feel, and act. And tying that into the business world, it's very impactful with regards to how we create and make leadership decisions.
Yeah.
And how we decide to perceive certain situations, right? So one example could be a team member that was newly promoted and everybody's gung ho. The leader or the C-suite is super excited about them stepping up in leadership. Fast forward 4 months, and if they're not sitting within those expectations that probably weren't communicated, then judgment creeps in from senior leadership. And I've seen it happen time and time again. And it really comes down to, 3 or 4 things. Is that C-suite leader self-aware? Are they passing judgment? What's the lens that they typically put on things? What type of personal biases do they have? And then what do they do with that outcome, right? And so what I'm hearing to connect, Dr. Eric, is that with you've chosen to go in and do your own work so that you understand your triggers. And that when you say, I look for hope, if there was that type of situation mirrored in your world, then you would try to look at it from a hopeful perspective and have a conversation to understand from a place of curiosity.
When the good Lord shuts the door, he opens a window. Some of my best business successes have been from failures. What I've learned, the difference is when I have a very narrow focus on what the thing is, I live in disappointment and I don't notice other things. But if I can let go of that and stay aware through the whole thing and just know everything's going to be okay, it's just another business deal, it's all right. I see opportunities that come up. May not have been what I thought, but they're real. And they may have been better than what I wanted before.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the same thing with people. Sometimes they're in a role and they're just not the right one for that role,
Right.
but they do have a role. And my role is to help them find it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe within my company, maybe not.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
I know I've laid someone off before and have them come back 5 years from now and thank me and
Mm-hmm.
said, you know what? That severance package, I invested in this and I did this and I started my own this and it worked. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because they weren't a fit. People
Mm-hmm.
want to be a fit.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's not a fit with everything. When people want to, from kids to work people to whoever, we try to fit in.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we do and sometimes we don't. And I think it's usually a blessing when we find someone that's not a fit for them
Mm-hmm.
and for us. I don't know if I hit on exactly what you're saying, but there's just so much in it if we're aware and open to possibilities. The other thing I'd say, just what you said, usually I've learned that we really don't know if somebody will fill a role until we try them in it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my experience with interviews is people, you're usually hearing what you want to hear, and they're usually
Mm-hmm.
telling you what you want to hear. So,
That's why there's a
so
probationary period. But I also
well, yeah,
think, in all seriousness, kind of what you're pointing to is to being open to the different types of conversations. And the bigger point that I'm hearing, Dr. Eric, is not to hold on to your own expectations, but just live
yeah,
in that moment, in the sense of what's coming across the table and what am I seeing from a performance perspective, or what is this person actually saying or need from me. The other piece that I think is really important from a leadership perspective, especially around being intentional or mindful, is that you don't know what's going on in that person's mind. And without a conversation, assumptions tend to take place or transpire. And if we're not a mindful person, oftentimes those assumptions tend to lean more to the negative side of things than the positive side of things, which points to the necessity of having curiosity as a huge skill set from a leadership perspective.
I find the human brain is wired to think it knows.
Mm.
And my experience is we don't have a clue. We don't
Mm-hmm.
have a clue what's going to happen that day. I mean, from the COVID to tsunamis to 9/11 to whatever. I mean, we think, or to win in the lottery.
Mm-hmm.
And also we think we know what's going on in someone else's mind. And some people have a better or more intuitive than others. But I find usually I don't unless I ask them.
Mm-hmm.
And I find a way to open up and a lot of times that employee employer thing is just not that open to
Mm-hmm.
really know. There's not that safety.
Mm-hmm.
So I think mindfulness and just good leadership can show that safety. Can you be trusted
Mm-hmm.
with something personal with
Exactly.
someone? I'd also say, being open that if someone's a good person but just not a fit, maybe there's somewhere else in the organization for them, or
Mm.
somewhere else in somebody else's organization that you can help them get to.
Mm.
That's a gift for both of you.
Definitely, definitely. And when you're kind of slightly switching gears here, when
Please.
you're looking at it from the perspective of starting out with mindfulness, I know that you had mentioned earlier, take it slow, kind of figure out your own
Yeah.
path.
Yeah.
But what else would you recommend in the sense of people out there that are listening right now that are like, okay, I hear this buzzword mindfulness, and it means nothing to me at this point in time. What would you say from a perspective of, the moving the bar of 1% so that people can start to lean into
Yeah.
mindfulness and get a little bit more curious or information on it?
The simplest, most direct, immediate impact is gratitude.
Mm.
I practice it every morning.
And what do you mean by that?
I find 3 things that I'm grateful for and why. And that sets up what I call an after image or an afterglow,
Mm-hmm.
that it's an immediate mindset change for me. And I start seeing other things nice in the day to be grateful for.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something like 10 years that I've been doing. My default would be to get up in the morning and say, where's mine? That's kind of how I start my day. Where's my coffee? Where's my paper? Where's my money?
Yeah.
And it just changes that for me. So I wasn't that way. And some people are that way by default. I wasn't. So if you're not, gratitude is something that takes a minute, maybe, to practice, and can change your mindset. And my experience is once I have that mindset change, I want more. So I would say that's the simplest, most direct. The next would be, start leaving your phone at lunch and taking a mindful walk around the building. Walk to your lunch or something and just leave your phone behind and with someone else or by yourself. You look up the trees, take a few breaths, just take some space and start getting some space. Then, if you decide a mindful movement, if you like that, I think it doesn't have to be yoga, but something to get in my body is great. Meditation, I found we start with 2 minutes. But people a lot of times just go so gung-ho, which you think is great, but I find you start 10 or 20 minutes, you get into it 10 or 15 days and you go, I can't meditate. It's just too busy up there. Well, yeah, it is. And it isn't busier because you're meditating. It's the first time you really noticed. And so 2 minutes, though, is something. And then if I do 2 minutes for a while, my mind starts to slow down and I crave a little more. Plus I'm changing my routines and I can find 2 minutes. If you can't find 2 minutes, you definitely need to have a deep look. You don't have 2 minutes. So start slow. And then as you notice, plus you become more focused, you're more efficient. Some other time opens up for you. You start realize how much time you're wasting. We waste so much time. Track your calendar for a couple of weeks and just say, what spaces could I find 2 minutes in? What am I doing that is not totally productive? Most of us, we're at work more than we're anything else. But how much of that time is really productive? If I'm focused and present at work, I say I can move the world in a few hours. I mean, I can do a lot.
And so when you're starting to think about, I guess, the benefits or the wins, tell us how your perspective started to change from where's mine to being in that mindful moment. What was the trickle effect in the sense of your leadership style?
When I learned that happiness comes from within, it is the start of the process, not the end of it. That happiness, which is a synonym for presence to me, of being in the moment. When I realized that would make me, we're doing an 8-week corporate mindfulness program right now, and reading The Happiness Advantage by Sean Archer, which is a great, simple read, and it's awesome. And all the research in there from Harvard is amazing, but happiness is the end. I mean, it's the beginning and the end. Sorry, I contradicted myself, but if you're happy first, I mean, who do you want to call? Someone that's happy and makes you feel better, or someone that's where's mine all the time? I want to call the person that makes me feel bigger, makes me feel happy and whatnot. I think they get the business. So when I learned just that as a work ethic, as showing up, being pleasant, being happy, and not in a fake way, but doing the practices that get me there, like gratitude, that get me there legitimately, that I'm in that space. And when I'm not, to recognize it, maybe take that walk or do that kind of thing, that's not like someday after I'm successful, I can do that. It's like, no, do that now. And I found it made me even more successful. It's business comes to me. I don't have to do it all. I have friends and partners that help me with it. And I like the journey, not just the destination I could retire. I love work. I love the people I work with. And I enjoy coming in. This is retirement to me.
Definitely. It's a passion. I can hear it and see it. I think that's amazing, Dr. Eric. And so for you now that it sounds to me like you've kind of gravitated to more so towards this mindfulness practice and gratitude and really kind of stepping in your own as a servant leader, we'll say, if I may stretch that. But I guess where my mind is now is, what are you currently working on so that it's something that doesn't regress or stays consistent, or you're even growing further on your journey when it comes to the mindfulness pieces?
Sharing with others.
Okay.
Sharing with others. It just fills me up, fills my cup.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And you think that's just for other, but I get so much out of it. You know, when I see someone else grow and they get, and work is a piece of it, but I call it the miracle of business mindfulness, because really they take it home. They share it with their spouses, their kids. We have a guy here, one of the top brokers in our area, leaves here every day at 4 and teaches his kids, and coaches his kids, and he's coaching them mindfulness. He's not meditating with them, but there's a mindful coach out there. It's amazing. So when I see that, plus I get so much gratitude from, we promote service work as part of this, is gratitude in action. Guys in our company, we're on, I don't know if everyone, but most of the nonprofits in town, we have some representation of, and that's what we do in our mindful leadership, promote that kind of. I feel like I'm in all those. I feel like, I'm not, I'm probably, but I feel like I have a finger in all those, and I feel those, and it just fills me up, saying the goodness that's happening. And it's not contrary to business. It generates business. Not why we do it. But someone was just in here, Rico Devlin was just in here sharing a minute ago how he has found that he wants to work with other people in the community that are building community. And that's how he grows his business.
Amazing.
I want to give to other givers, and that's where you find them.
Definitely.
So that's what fills me up.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing. And I heard that you also have a book launching soon. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it's Profit with Presence, the 12 Pillars of Mindful Leadership. The 12 pillars are kind of the foundation of our mindful leadership program at Living in the Gap. It starts with a conceptual framework with a little bit of a deep dive. You got to kind of go through that first chapter, because there's some heady concepts in mindfulness, and I've tried to put them in bite-sized chunks. And then it just lays out with stories and 12 pillars of how you can actually put these things into practice in your personal business life. And then I discuss what a mindful CEO is and what it isn't. And if you, at a mindful corporation, if you're interested in having your company tip into being more mindful, here's some things that could work and some traps to watch out for and those kind of things. And then I set out a new conceptual worldview, which I see business at the head of the table. Business adopting mindfulness and being fed up with gridlock and divisiveness and distraction, and saying, let's get to business. Let's move the world. We can solve all these problems if we just put our petty grievances aside and decide, and so that's my dream.
Just a small dream, Dr. Eric. But I think it's powerful.
What the heck?
It's something to tune into. Definitely.
Yeah.
I know I will, for sure. Where can our listeners find your book?
You can go to our website, livinginthegap.org, which has our book and any of our workshops. And there's free resources, a 21-day introduction to mindfulness, a book list, those kind of things. Or it's available for pre-sale on Amazon, coming out soon. I think March 7th is the ship date. So go on and pre-order a copy and have it delivered and get started. It's hopefully, you can start as small and go as deep. And I hope to give a guide there and to say, just get started with something. And when you want more, it's there. There's some resources there to do it. But if we could all be a little more mindful and all chip in a little bit, I just don't think our problems are insurmountable at all. I think our belief that we can solve them is where it starts.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us and expertise.
Thank you, Ange, for having me on. It's been a delight.
Fantastic. Take good care.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Human Side of Business podcast. I'm glad you could join us. If you enjoyed today's episode and want to stay updated with our latest content, make sure to visit our website. The link can be found in the episode description, where you can subscribe to the podcast, sign up for our newsletter, and learn more about our whole person leadership services. Sounds interesting? Explore the Whole Person Leadership Cohort by Intuitive Performance, a unique program that offers unparalleled support to managers on every step of their leadership journey. Our program features evidence-based assessments, workbooks, group coaching, and interactive learning experiences to help you level up your leadership skills. Reach out today to apply to one of our upcoming cohorts. Until next time, take care and stay curious.